You're listening to the Teach Better Talk podcast featuring expert educators eager to share progressive tactics to reach more students. Teach Better Talk is created by teachers and fueled by passion. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 163 of Teach Better Talk. My name is Ray Hewart, and as always, I'm with my incredibly frustrating co-host, Jeff Gargas. There's no need to explain.
But
nothing
explain. Specific that triggered it, just in general, very frustrated. All right,
great. This episode was full of you needing to mute yourself because your cat was meowing and wanting to be a part of the party. So let's just go with that for right now.
So I want to make sure that that's not me. That's him.
Yeah, but Mittens is never the problem. Mittens is the best cat ever.
Mittens is the source of all my problems.
You're obviously not, making him feel valued and, spending enough time with him. You should work on that, Jeff.
I actually think he sees you and he gets really upset because he misses you. And
that must be it.
And he's like, oh, I know her. It's my friend. Actually, he just always wants food. When you give him food, he's like, nope, not enough. I want more, please. That's just how he is.
That's my problem too. I just don't like
a chance he's gonna come here and it might end up on my back or whatever. I'm just gonna let him be right now. So it is.
I just want the world to know that I'm in a different chair recording today because I kept having dogs jump into our podcast recording, and now that we're on camera, that was quite embarrassing. So now I'm in a chair that nobody can join me in, and so the dogs are sleeping and being quiet. I just want the world to know.
This was like the ultimate episode of animal interruptions. And the best part is we can't blame it on like coronavirus or anything. Like they would be doing it anyway. Nothing's changed for podcast recording. So anyway, so speaking of coronavirus and all that craziness, I didn't mean to do that kind of interlude, but I wanted to have you share a little bit about some of the awesomeness that's been going on in our private Facebook group with our daily drop-ins, which is something that I'm so pumped that we started doing. We were together right before all this, everything shut down, and then everything started shutting down, and we're like, oh, we need to change what we're doing, adjust some things. We need to go 1000% support mode. What can we do? And you were like, hey, here's a course 4 hours later. But then you were also like, you're like, all right, so we're going to go live every morning, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. And we're like, all right, let's do it. And it's gone. And it's been awesome. And we've had a whole bunch of awesome people join us. And it's just been going great. People saying, this is part of my daily schedule. I'm getting up now. I'm making sure I'm getting up and getting ready, get my workout in, get my coffee just so I can join in. So
I do love that because originally a lot of the work we were doing when we were all in the classroom, which makes sense when all the teachers had their mornings kind of in a different routine, a lot of the support we did was in the afternoon. And so we were debating on if we should just do a daily drop-in, but have it be a PM drop-in. And thank God we didn't, because doing these morning drop-ins have not only been enjoyable, which I hope we highlight a few, because we not only have had great guests join us, but we have some killer guests coming on this week. Mm-hmm. But also it forces me every morning, whether I'm live for the drop-in or not, to have something to get up for. And I know that sounds silly because obviously we all still have remote learning and other responsibilities, but it really has set a morning routine for me that I didn't realize I would appreciate so much.
Yeah, it's set a really good routine, and I think it sets a tone for your day. And so I'm thinking about last week we had Sarah Johnson on. Sarah Johnson, if you don't know her, from Balance Like a Pirate, Lead with Faith, who's just awesome. And one of the things she talked about was, during not just remote learning, but just during this, isolation and quarantine that we're all in, that not allowing other things to determine the tone of your day. So not turning on the news right off the bat and getting all the, the negativity and the bad news in, or anything like that. She said, don't even go on social media, but figure out how you're going to start your day, how you want your day to start and go, and set your tone. And I think these drop-ins have become that for our team and for a lot of other people. Is I'm going to start my day this way, with positivity, with community, with support, with learning, with growth, right, with some laughs, and with the Teach Better team, which has been awesome. So I think that's been really, really cool to see.
Well, and we originally were saying that we were just going to try and pull off this everyday morning drop-in. But what I love is that we've really had this outpour of community members, administrators, principals, counselors, just everyone in between willing to come on and join us for these daily drop-ins. So you're not only starting the morning with, like all you said, like the positivity in our team, but you're hearing from an educator that could be located anywhere across the country who's sharing their story and sharing the ideas that they either tried and failed or tried and found success with. So it's just like really good food for thought to start the morning with. I've really enjoyed them. There was one earlier this week that I was watching. Even just Becky was on it. Becky's a part of the Teach Better team. I can talk to her whenever I want. But she was sharing so much insight, and she had such a different story, such a different narrative of her remote learning experience thus far. It just was so nice to learn from her in that lens. And I was so glad that there were so many people participating in the comments, because that's really where I find the most value, not only with the educators that we have sharing their story, but being able to like ask questions live and like really like build this into a part of your experience rather than just being a consumer of content, which sometimes is appropriate, but not always.
Yeah, it's been really cool. I had a blast just the other day with John Sowash, who came on. Who's the
his was so good.
Just so much knowledge when it comes to just anything Google, but then Chromebooks and Meets and everything. And he provided so much valuable content there. That's one. If you're using a Chromebook or anything Google related, you definitely need to check out that episode in that video, which is saved in the group under videos, so you can always get that. It's also, they're all here on the Teach Better Talk podcast as bonus episodes. So yes, Miss Hewitt.
I have to tell you, guys, if you've not listened to that one, I kid you not, they're all good. That one had so many quick things.
I know.
Oh my God, there were so many. I kid you not, I was watching it in bed because I was taking a like slow morning, and I was just watching like all the tips, and I was like taking notes all of the sudden of all these different Chrome extensions, and they were so helpful.
There was a little one he did that I just thought was awesome. It was the one of using the emojis.
Oh, that was genius.
As a way of labeling all your assignments and stuff. Like, I'm telling you,
so
such a cool, simple way that could be so much fun, especially for younger kids, but I think all the way through. But just some really cool stuff. So, and he's continued to answer questions in the group too when they come through. I just keep going to him. So super excited about that. Now we're recording right now. This episode actually comes out about a week from now. So, the next week, which is going to be the week of this podcast coming out, the week of the 13th, got some great guests. But right now, this week, I'm excited. On Wednesday, I've got, I don't know what it is, Wednesday or Thursday, I've got my good buddy Maurice Martin coming on, who's actually not an educator, but he's a counselor, and he works with people, and he's worked with people that deal with depression, that deal with suicidal tendencies, that have dealt with deep loss. He's also a minister and a pastor, or a pastor and a musician and an artist and a coach, and he's taught music for probably a decade or so now, and he's one of my dearest friends in the world. And I'm super excited because I think what we're going to talk about, what he really wants to focus on, is self-care and this mental care that we have to all take during this time. And I think you're going to love it, because you've never met Maurice, Ray, but when he just speaks, you're going to be like, oh man, just listening to Maurice is going to make me feel calmer, even if I don't know what he's saying. And so I'm pumped up about that. So, and I love when I can bring in people from my world and stuff like that. But anyone that we've got coming up either right now while we're waiting for this episode to come out, or coming in the next week or so, that you're really excited about, and then we can.
Honestly, there are a few different ones I want to highlight. One is that Suzanne Daly is joining me on the 10th.
Yes.
And oh my God, if there's anyone more full of sunshine, I don't know who. And I cannot wait. We haven't done this episode yet, so when this is coming out, I actually won't lie to you. I don't know how it's going to be, but I can tell you I'm going to be smiling ear to ear, just soaking up her happiness. And if you haven't checked out, by the way, her blog series that she has at teachbetter.com, that's titled Teach Happier. Like, oh my goodness. I just love her quick tips, and she's so generous with the way that she gives us all permission to take time to teach happier. I love that. I also have LaVonna Roth joining me, and you know that I'm like a fangirl of LaVonna Roth, so I cannot wait until she's out with us as well for the Daily Drop-In.
I love it. And then actually just right after this episode comes out on the 13th, and I think the next day, or so either tomorrow for you listening or the day after. I can't remember what day it is. I'm not looking at the calendar because I'm horrible. But Sheldon Eakins is coming on, and Sheldon's gonna be talking to us all about equity. And
Yeah.
in this time, right, in this thing, we talked about it so many times on our drop and stuff like that too, about how equity is being highlighted right now. It's such a struggle. So he is like the go-to guy when it comes to that. So I'm super excited to have him on as well. So
These are so fun. I love starting
yeah.
our morning about this stuff. So it's been so worthwhile. If you haven't joined us, by the way, I know that you probably already have seen that they become bonus episodes on Teach Better Talk podcast. I'm sure it's overwhelmed you that we're publishing 7 episodes a week, but just trying to get you as much value as possible. You can also find the full videos with the actual video itself, not just the audio, as well over on YouTube. But I'm telling you guys, you have to join the Facebook group to actually participate. And that's where the gold is. Ask your questions, challenge the people on the video, really get to those nitty-gritty tactical takeaways you need to be successful. Come join us. We want you there. So that would be at teachbettergroup.com. I know we say it all the time, but I still really believe that while we have an amazing Teach Better family, that is like a very small niche of like really eager to learn educators that I want you all to be a part of.
Yes. Love it. All right, let's talk. I love that we're doing that. I'm so pumped about those morning drop-ins. But I'm also pumped about this episode. Let's talk about this episode real quick, and we're going to get right into it. So Ashley Fienup is a high school social studies and special education teacher. She's in her 3rd year teaching right now at a high school in Iowa. She happens to be someone who started using the grid method this year. So we actually talk quite a bit about the grid method, what she's using it for, how it's changed the way she looks at the way she teaches, what it's done for her and what it's done for her students, which I think is some really cool power in there. Just not just about the grid method, but about mastery learning frameworks and just that personalized learning in general. I really enjoy this episode. Ray, anything you want to shout out before we go?
No, I'm an Ashley fan. I really enjoyed not only her story here, but following her on Instagram and Twitter. I just think that I love connecting with teachers. They're just trying to do good and try things, and she is the girl for it. I love it.
I love it. Let's get an episode 163 with Ashley Fienup.
Hey guys, we'll get right back to the episode, but I wanted to make sure you had all the details for the Administrator Mastermind that we are hosting on April 15th. You can head over to teachbetter.com/mastermind for the private link to join administrators around the country to ask questions, share resources, and gain insight on Wednesday, April 15th at 1 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Eastern. Head over to teachbetter.com/mastermind for that private link, and we'll meet you there. Now let's get back to the episode.
All right, we are here. We are chatting with Ashley Fienup. And Ashley, it's awesome to have you on the podcast. We've been talking a little bit before. We're already laughing a little bit, so that's always a good sign. Really interested to kind of just learn more about your story, kind of dive into your mind a little bit. Before we get too deep into anything, how you feeling right now?
I'm feeling good. In week, let's see, I'm losing track of the weeks. I think week 2 or maybe week 3 of some distance learning. So things are interesting.
Definitely interesting to say the least. Well, I'm glad that you're here, and I'm so excited for you to share not only what you're doing for remote learning, but also just the stuff that you've done in education thus far. Before we kind of get into all the questions that we have for you, would you mind just sharing with our audience a little bit about what you do, kind of your role in education?
Yeah, sure. So I kind of have a unique role. I'm in my 3rd year of teaching. I teach at a high school in Des Moines, and I'm actually a half-time social studies and special education teacher. So I kind of do a lot of different things throughout the day, wear a lot of different hats, but it's definitely fun working with a ton of different students throughout the day, and kind of just having those different roles. I think it keeps every day pretty interesting.
Yeah, I bet it does. So that also places, I would think, a little more twist, little challenges on top of your day right now doing remote learning. So are you finding, I'm guessing there's quite a few differences, but I don't know if you would mind sharing sort of what are the biggest differences between your different roles and how you're reaching those students now that we're in this remote learning?
Yeah, it's definitely looked different with how I'm interacting with my gen ed students compared to my special ed students. Unfortunately, on the special education side, there's not a ton that we're able to do yet, since those students obviously have some challenges that are really difficult to meet virtually. I did have my first virtual IEP meeting last week. So we are adapting as we need to, but it's definitely been something new that I never expected that I would have to do. So just trying to kind of work on some skills with those students that we were working on before we left for spring break, so it's not completely new. But yeah, it has been a huge challenge.
Are you checking in daily with all of your students? Are you doing like meetups or video check-ins or things like that? Or how are you finding that you're best communicating with your gen ed students right now?
Mostly through email is the main approach. And then as students, if they are comfortable, doing some sort of Google Hangouts or virtual video calls that way, which obviously not every student is super comfortable hopping on video with their teacher, but some have, which has been a good thing. My school uses Schoology, and so I've just been doing some discussion posts, which has been a nice way for my students to kind of connect. I've reached some students through Google Chats, which I think they're even more comfortable with, since it's kind of like texting and messaging. So that's kind of been the way I've gotten a hold of some of them.
So one of the things that we always talk about on this show is failure, and talking about sort of the lessons learned and what we can take away from the challenges that we meet along the way. So I was hoping you could share a story with us by the time you've had a failure or a big challenge in your life. Kind of take us there with you. Tell us what happened. How did you overcome that? And then what did you take away from that experience?
Yeah. So I don't know that I didn't really think of a specific event, but when I was thinking back to my first 2 years of teaching, I think just the way that I was approaching teaching and my students was kind of failing both my students and me. Everyone kind of knows what it's like to be a new teacher, where you're just in pure survival mode. And every day I felt like I was spending hours after school just getting ready to make it through the next day. So because of this, I kind of fell into a really traditional way of teaching, where I put the same thing in front of all of my kids every single day. And I've started to notice I was just really frustrated, like with my kids. I wasn't really reaching them in the way that I wanted to. I wasn't getting like the reactions that I wanted to. And so I just felt really discouraged, I would say, and frustrated a lot of days because of that. And so, yeah, I think that traditional way of teaching, it was just not really working for me or for my students.
And so then what did you take away from that? What changes did you put in place?
So at the time, it was getting towards the end of my second year of teaching, and our instructional coach at our school had kind of mentioned one of the middle school teachers in our district was using the grid method, so self-paced, personalized learning, and I was just super interested in it. So we took some time out of a school day. We went over and we observed her classroom, and I was super hooked right away. So I realized that I wanted to do things differently. So I pretty much just spent that whole next summer doing the grid method class or course on your guys' website, getting everything ready for that next semester. I was just super ready to do things different with my kids and see how that went.
And how has it gone?
It was going really well until we stopped going to
all
school.
This happened, of course, yes.
Yeah, it has gone super well. I teach 2 different social studies classes, and so in the first semester is when I teach kind of like a financial literacy and economics class, and so that's where I started implementing it with my students, and I just saw a huge change in both my students and me as their teacher. I felt like before I wasn't really reaching like my high achieving students or my struggling students. My high achieving students were just kind of bored because they got through things quickly and then they had to wait for everyone else. And my struggling students, I felt like I didn't really have the time to help them like I needed to. So when I started doing the grid, it completely changed that. I felt like I was able to reach almost all of my kids in a class period. And so it was just a huge, huge game changer for me.
Ashley, it's so interesting that you say that, because I feel like I had such like a similar story when I tried something like when I was comparing my traditional classroom and then the shift I made to the grid method was, you're right. I felt like I had like really successfully reached about 80% of my students, but there was like 10% at the bottom or 10% at the top that either needed enrichment or support. And I never could figure out how a teacher found time to like really dedicate not only the time that it takes to build those students up who come into our classrooms and have those big gaps in learning, but then also like provide enrichment opportunities for students who are really ready for those. And I kind of just thought that maybe like teaching was like being okay at a B-. And then when I like, adopted something like a self-paced learning, I know you and I both use the grid method framework. It just changed things because I feel like I had the gift of time, which is such a blessing for teachers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. I think it gave me so much time on so many different levels. I found myself like, because I had prepared my unit from the beginning to end before it started, I actually had time during my plan period or time after school to think of things like enrichment activities or write my students notes for the first time or call parents about like positive things my students were doing, things I never felt like I had the time to do before. And then when I was actually like teaching my kids, I felt like I had the time to pull some kids that were struggling with certain concepts into small groups and work with them, or just work with the student one-on-one, which before when I was kind of doing traditional teaching, I never felt like I could do because I was worried, like, what are all the other kids going to do if I pull a small group or work one-on-one? So it has given me like the gift of time in a ton of different places in my job.
It's really interesting because I know, sorry, Jeff, I just have to keep talking about this really quick.
No, you're good.
It's funny because you talked about how it was going really well and now they're in this remote learning setting. I think a lot of teachers similar to you, especially those that used a mastery framework, are in an interesting spot now adapting the classroom that they kind of already built to be student focused, student driven, where students take this ownership over learning and trying to bring that into a remote learning classroom. So I'm really interested as we continue to kind of learn about the things that you're doing in your classroom. I've kind of built like mini grids that kind of just span the week. And so my students are still getting the benefit of like scaffolding towards mastery, learning opportunities on target, and then also a little bit of optional enrichment, because I think that students find like a comfort in that familiarity. And then they're able to really see how that connects back to our classroom when we were all together as like a family. So I think it's so cool that we're getting to interview you today during this weird time that we're in.
Yeah, I think that one of the beauties of like doing the grid method is that my students have loved, like you said, they are familiar with it. They know how everything is organized. We keep it consistent every single unit that we do. So as I've been thinking about doing this distance learning, I'm not really worried about my students adapting to that because I think that they'll know exactly what to do. They know where to find all of their learning opportunities and they know what to expect like at the end of each level. So I think that a lot of that brings me comfort is they know the system and it's not going to be a ton different online.
Yeah, I think that's everything you're saying is so common that we're hearing. One, I want to touch on the gift of time that you said is that, you know, so many teachers that's what we hear back as we get working with them more and more with the grid method is that it is a lot of upfront work. We never lie about that. We always make sure we're like this is a lot of upfront work, but you're giving yourself that as you say, gift of time throughout the year so that you can do things like you said, think through and plan out enrichment activities. You're talking about sending home positive notes and making calls and things of that nature. Like, I love hearing that. I love hearing that you're not panicking right now. You're not worrying right now. And we kind of wish that for everyone. So really, really appreciate you sharing that. So I want to flip the story now around to something positive. Or something of a successful. So let's talk about a success that you've had. This could be something big or something small, but tell us what happened. Why was it a success for you? And what did you take away from that experience?
Yeah, I think I I just love talking about the grid method, not even just because I'm talking to you guys. So I'm going to kind of go along with that theme, but just using it has been a huge success. I was honestly so worried. Just coming from a traditional mindset, I was so worried that my kids were going to be focused on the grades and everything not being graded. So I think a huge success for me when I was doing it with my students. One of my students just really wanted to take a mastery check, which for people who don't know is just like an assessment at the end of their level. And normally I like them to complete the learning opportunities beforehand. And I knew that this student was not ready, but I said, fine, it's okay, go ahead and take it. And the student did really poorly. And he came up to me afterwards and he was like, Miss Fienup, I finally understand. Like, I am not ready to master that like content yet. And even though you don't grade our learning opportunities, every single one teaches us something that we need to know so that we do well. And that was just a huge
moment.
Yeah, it was awesome because, like I said, I was super fixated on, oh my gosh, am I going to get my kids to do anything if I don't grade it? And once they find out that they're not graded, they're totally going to give up. And so that was a really, really big success when they realized the purpose behind learning and that it was more to them than just a grade in the grade book.
Absolutely. That is such a massive shift that I feel like those moments are the ones that like remind me of why I work so hard in my classroom. It's to create that culture that you're talking about, this culture of students really being self-aware, taking ownership over their learning, being able to reflect and give feedback and rationalize their thoughts. I mean, that is the dream classroom. At least for me, it really is. And so to be able to duplicate that in classrooms, whether they be elementary school teachers, like a first grade teacher, or middle school or high school, I think it's so powerful, the opportunity we can give for students to really take on those tasks. So I feel like that's such a success, such a great teacher moment. I'm totally there with you, Ashley.
Yeah, it was awesome just to see them. It was the first time I really felt like my students had taken ownership of their own learning, and they wanted to learn it just to learn it, and to not have to be worried about those like extrinsic motivators was so nice.
Absolutely. So I have to ask you, when we talk about what excites us about education, I know that you've had a lot of different things that excite you, especially early on in your career. I feel like there's so many things in education that just continue to be exciting. But if I had to ask you kind of what was fueling your fire and really keeping you excited about education right now and everything that you're doing, what do you think that would be?
Well, I think right now I'm just really excited about the idea of just like being back in my classroom and back with my kids. And it's nice to have had this time, just kind of downtime to think about all of the really great things that I want to do with them. But I just think that one really exciting thing about like education, and when I think about implementing like the grid method, I think it's just exciting that there are so many teachers that are wanting to flip the script a little bit, doing like a self-paced and personalized learning. I don't think it really comes naturally to teachers. I know that it didn't really come naturally to me. I was kind of skeptical at first because that's not really how I did school, and that's not really how school worked in my mind. And so it's exciting that so many teachers want to put in the work to do personalized learning for their students, because like Jeff said, it is a lot of work. But I think that it's so beneficial for students to kind of give them this new way of learning. And so that's just something that's really excited me, just that people are thinking about education differently than they had before.
Absolutely. And so I have to ask you, this is my favorite question, especially to ask teachers that are early in their career, or, this is so powerful. I have to know what advice you'd give someone. So maybe this is a brand new teacher similar to you in your role, or this could be a veteran teacher, or just somebody that you're connected to on social media. What's the advice that has really made the difference in the work that you're doing?
I would have to say the biggest piece of advice that I have is just for teachers to try new things. I think a lot of us just get so fixated on failing or looking bad in front of our students. And so we just decide to play it safe. And I think that what I've learned this year is that students are a lot more gracious than you would ever think that they are. There's been a lot of times when I've been implementing the grid in my classroom that things have not gone how I planned. And there's been a lot of failures along the way. But my students, they were never that upset about it as I thought that they would be. And so I think trying new things in our classroom is a great example for our kids. If we fail, it helps them realize we are humans and we do make mistakes. And if we succeed, then it's showing them that it's okay to take risks sometimes. And so I would just try as many new things as you can. I think for a while too, I kind of thought if I make a mistake, I'm going to mess up my kids. And I have not messed them up at this point. So it's okay to try new things with your classroom.
I love that. That is great advice. And I'm always saying to teachers who are maybe letting a little fear get in their way or a little worried about trying something, that if you're trying something that you believe is the right thing for your kids, then you're good. You'll figure it out and you can adjust and you get back to it. So I love that advice. So let's have a little bit of fun. Let's do the next 6 questions, and your goal is to answer each one in 15 seconds or less. You ready?
Yes.
All right. What is one ed tech tool you cannot live without?
Cami.
What is a book you're reading right now?
I am reading Educated by Tara Westover.
Who do we need to follow on Twitter or Instagram today?
So many people. I would follow Brian Mendler if you are interested in classroom management. Hashtags in history, also on Instagram if you are a social studies teacher. She has great stuff. And then Sarah Brown Wessling is a teacher actually in the Des Moines area that I would also recommend following.
Is that on Twitter or Instagram? Where's your go-to?
All of those are on Instagram.
On Instagram, great. And
yep.
What is a good YouTube channel or website for educators?
I really like using edted.com.
And give us a daily, weekly, or monthly routine every teacher should get into.
I would say for yourself, find whatever it is that fills you up and make sure you do that as much as possible because it's easy to get kind of drained as a teacher. And for your students, I would just ask them what they want to learn about because then I just notice when they tell you what they want to learn about, then it kind of helps buy in a little bit.
And finally, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Nothing changes if nothing changes.
Oh,
that's a good one.
It is a good one. I feel like that should be on the wall in front of me, in my workspace. Nothing changes if nothing changes. That's powerful, Ashley.
Yeah, I think it's really been my motto for this year.
So for all of us uncomfortable right now in the current times, nothing changes if nothing changes. Let's come back stronger, be better. I think this is so timely. I love that. So if we have listeners who want to make sure they connect with you and just learn all about things you're doing and continue to grow on your journey through education, where's the best spot for them to stay connected?
I totally need to get better about using social media, but I am on Twitter, kind of. I post a little bit. So my Twitter is A Fienup, and then I'm also on Instagram, and my handle is Ashley Fienup.
And for those of you listening, Fienup is Fienup. So you can find her there on either one of those. We'll make sure we include that in the show notes. So you can find all the links and all the resources we've mentioned in this episode over at teachbetter.com, as well as the links to connect with Ashley over in the show notes. So head over to teachbetter.com for all of that. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And if you can give us a rating and review, we'd really appreciate that as well. And let's keep taking this one step further. Think of just 3 of your colleagues who need to hear these amazing stories and share this podcast with them. Ashley, this was awesome. So happy and so excited to have you on the podcast. Excited for people to hear your story and learn so much from you. And I look forward to kind of continuing being connected and hearing how things are going as you continue to navigate these crazy times. But thanks for coming on and hanging out with us for a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Until next time, let's get out there and let's teach better.